Ho is fire, sacred fire, and Kenta wilts under her gaze. She tells him that he is corrupt and that she can sense his guilt. Knowing that she's right, Kenta breaks down and runs from the room. By contrast, she names Hibiki Heart of Gold and asks him about the Master Balls that Kenta wanted to smuggle into the Pokemon League arena. In the end, she agrees to assist in the task, even after Hibiki is already resolved to free her. For anyone unfamiliar with Christian doctrine, we basically believe that no one is truly good because the standard is perfection. An otherwise good person who has sinned even once is like a bowstring that has been severed at least once. That's why we need Jesus. Hibiki happens to be one of Japan's few Christian converts, and that's what Ho-Oh sensed in him, the spirit of Christ that lives in his heart. It doesn't suddenly make Hibiki perfect, but it's there, influencing his actions. Anyway, Ho-Oh leaves, and Ein wanders off in an existential daze. Kenta's an emotional wreck, and once more, Hibiki is there to lend him a shoulder. It's obvious that Kenta can't take much more of the pressure. Despite how little he's done to help in previous missions, Hibiki's been essential for keeping Kenta's sanity in check. Kenta implores Hibiki that he make the trainer's journey when his work is over. Hibiki cannot promise him, but he says he'll do it if he can. Another little Christian doctrine: just let your yes be yes and your no be no. No need to swear or make vows as if your word isn't good enough. The brothers meet with Red and Bill outside of Victory Road, where they will go to join the contestants of the Masters Tournament. In case you were wondering about some of the names on the matchup list, they are authors from the Pokemon Tower that put out quality work back in the day. Bill's disguised as one of them, a guy who writes well enough, but seems obsessed with cloaks and blowing hair out of your eyes. I couldn't resist poking a little fun. Whatever, so Bill gets caught, and Hibiki tries to rescue him when a group of trainers appear out of nowhere and rescues him from the guard. They call themselves the Vanguard, and leading them are a brother and sister from another Pokemon region. I put this in to once again show that there are things happening beyond the lives of Kenta and Hibiki. These two siblings, Ivy and Ian, are original character ideas from a game I once imagined, Pokemon Ivory and Obsidian. See what I did there? This was before the uninspired Pokemon White and Black came out. You know that ship captain from the Kanto games who gives you the HM move Cut? He was going to be a gym leader for the new Light-type Pokemon, but that's never happening now. Boy, I get distracted easily. The group gets through Victory Road, and Ivy sneaks Hibiki into the locker area under the stadium, using her Alicorn Pokemon's invisibility power. The other masters notice them when they arrive, but they quickly pivot their attention when Kenta and Red burst through the doors to escape some fans. The party gets into the privacy of an empty locker room, but news of their arrival reaches champion Brendan Birch, who comes down to meet Red. Kenta and Hibiki hide inside some lockers, and watch for a while as Red and Brendan argue about how to handle G.R.I.P. Red's prepared to attack the new system head-on, but Brendan wants to compromise. He argues that, since G.R.I.P's initial justification for limiting Pokemon trainers was safety, they can bring back the old system simply by adding a couple of safety measures. To demonstrate, he sends out his Gardevoir, who has a talk collar permitting basic speech. Red is stunned, and Brendan envisions a future where all beginning trainers are escorted by talking Pokemon guardians, though only Gardevoir are currently compatible with the technology. I am positive that I am not the first person to think of this. No Pokemon on the internet has been Rule 34'd harder than Gardevoir, not even Lopunny. These are the kinds of thoughts that drift from Kenta's locker, alerting Gardevoir to his presence. Brendan rips open the door, only to see a carbon copy of himself waving cheerily inside. Brendan demands to know who he is, and Red tentatively explains that it's Gold, the trainer who beat him. Thus meet the three greatest Pokemon trainers of their time, in a somewhat less than dignified manner. And screw all the rest from the later games, especially Lucas. Brendan still drags his feet for a while, but he agrees to lend his support. With that, Kenta and Hibiki say farewell, and the next time we'll see Hibiki is when he wakes up in Curtis's car. Until then, Kenta enters the arena dressed as Brendan one last time. He's up against Stephen Stone, and as soon as the battle begins, he returns his Metagross to him. Stephen is speechless, but the surrounding guards immediately attack Kenta. While he and Brendan take care of them, Red commandeers the announcer booth and starts hooking up Bill's new technology. Suddenly, the electronic scoreboard switches from battle stats to a live feed of a woman's face. Gen Zero, the league champion before Blue. About Jen, she's one of those villains that shows up right at the end of the movie, like Doomsday and Talia al Ghul. Personally, I prefer stories when the villain is known the whole time, but I also wanted the villain to be an ideology rather than a person. That's how life works. You can kill Osama bin Laden and keep irrational ideologues like Bernie Sanders out of the president's chair, but more will always take their place. The world changes, not when you hate and attack people, but when you wage war on their ideas. Jen's idealism was largely rejected by the populace, and that's why people like her have to resort to propaganda, intimidation, and force. Granted, Kenta applied force as well, but only after his enemies escalated things. Contrary to elementary school teachings, it does matter who started it. Jen makes an attempt at diplomacy, giving her spiel about how Pokemon users are proverbial lion tamers, and if Pokemon wanted to, they could throw off their shackles and defeat their human overlords. Like many before him, Kenta rejects her logic, and says that G.R.I.P is just using it as an excuse to claim everyone's strongest Pokemon. To prove it, he has his newly recovered Dragonite fly towards the Elite Four HQ with a head camera to expose the Pokemon storage he found to the whole world. However, Brendan notices movement in the corner of the camera feed, and alerts Kenta that a mobile military task force has been dispatched to reclaim the Indigo Stadium. Kenta concludes that Jen was just stalling for time, and the renegade Pokemon trainers fortify the stadium in preparation for battle. Jen confirms that the task force is under her command, but insists that she meant what she said when she was distracting Kenta. So, there are shadowy figures behind the name of G.R.I.P that want the power, control, and domination that an army of superior Pokemon can give them. And then there are all the useful idiots who help them towards their goal, with blessings to boot. Yes, give up your powerful Pokemon! Don't you want your training to be safer? Don't you want harmony between people and Pokemon? Don't you trust your benevolent government to do the right thing? Jen may be a useful idiot who was granted a temporary puppet platform. Then again, she might be the very fist of G.R.I.P, who was ravenous for power ever since Blue took away her champion throne. What do you think? Anyway, the military police surround the stadium, and Captain Arcada demands that the inhabitants surrender at once. In response, Kenta has Zapdos create a blinding flash, which serves as the summoning beacon for Ho-Oh. Even as the military move to attack, Ho-Oh bursts onto the scene, sets the nearest enemy Pokemon ablaze, and leaves behind the sack of duplicated Master Balls. The Renegades then make a frontal attack, and the criminal teams flank from behind. At first, the military police dominate the fight, but their numbers steadily dwindle as Kenta snags their Pokemon one by one. When it becomes obvious that they're going to lose, Jen distracts Kenta with a showing of his Typhlosion, Suffering. She offers to return his Pokemon, on condition that he abandons fighting, permanently. Kenta relents, his will finally broken, but Red insists that the war must go on. At this, Jen loses her temper, and sends in the Mew clone G.R.I.P has been working on. Mew 3 toys with them for a short while, then is interrupted by the coming of another Mewtwo. Not the one from Mount Cana that Kenta spoke with, but a different one that Red seems to know about. The clones fight, and seem evenly matched as far as they can tell. I've got 3 things to say about this part. First, Typhlosion's containment is largely inspired by the SCP Foundation website. I'd suggest checking it out if you're into advanced sci-fi supernatural stuff. Second, the Mew 3 idea is another reference from Phoenix Rising. Not that Mew 3 is a unique idea, but like the Light type, it's something that fans have wanted for a while. Third, I never get around to explaining why the Mewtwo from Cerulean Cave comes to Red's aid. You're welcome to speculate. Jen halts the battle, and reprimands Kenta for being a warlord and taking things as far as they have. Kenta points out that she's projecting her faults onto him, which all of Japan will be witnesses of. With heavily restrained anger, Jen offers once more to return Typhlosion, in exchange for Kenta's personal surrender. Kenta agrees, and Mew 3 whisks him away. The last couple of pages are a rapid cooldown of events that briefly touch on how the characters turn out. Pretty much all of them are safe for the time being, but the nation of Japan is now firmly in a state of civil war and unrest, It's not what you call a happy ending, or really a hopeful ending, or even an actual ending. But it's the alternative to what was otherwise inevitable, Japan becoming an imperialist war state like North Korea. I'm not mocking the Japanese here, for the record. On the contrary, I love the foods, martial arts, sense of discipline, the games, and especially the anime that they've provided. Japan is simply Pokemon's place of origin. What's important isn't the setting, but the lessons this story was meant to teach. And if you didn't learn anything, but you had a fun time listening, well, that's good enough. Time to rate my own story. I give me an 8 out of 10. While I think I've created a decent argument for conservative and libertarian logic, this was supposed to be a story about Kenta. He was supposed to travel with a Typhlosion and Beedrill, not a Salamence and Zapdos. Lance never appeared, Silver didn't even get a mention, and the Red Gyarados wasn't in Kenta's championship team. And of course, the story didn't have much of an ending. If you're wondering about stuff like what became of Mew 3, Gen, and Hibiki's Pokemon journey, well, you'll just have to keep wondering. I could write a sequel, but like Kenta in the story, I am utterly spent. I said what I wanted to say, and I'm done with this alternate universe for the foreseeable future. It was fun while it lasted, still not as good as Phoenix Rising, which is coming up right after this.